And before I'm going to hand over the microphone, then just speak directly into it. Yeah, not here, here. Because the sessions will be recorded with people. I hope so. So before you can start speaking, I've had a rule in this room, the rule that I made because I can. I've asked for 3 words that describe your life, your world outside AI. That means the time when you're not working on AI, that means the time you're not using AI, and that means the time you're not thinking about AI. So who'd like to go first?
3 words.
3 words that describe your world outside AI.
Cooking, reading, and laughing.
Sleep, children, wife. Unfortunately not.
So, eating, traveling, children.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Welcome to our session. I think second last on the day. So I think my question then is, anyone in the room not kind of actively in kind of regulation or compliance, or are you all dyed in the wool governance compliance regulation people? No one's putting their hand up if they're not? No, we have a couple. Okay, that's nice. Glad to have you at the session. We're going to start with some introductions first. I will go last in those introductions. But I wanted to say I have 6 degrees, and yet I'm the least educated person on the panel. We have two doctors here, and so we'll start with Dr. Lisa Chang. And you want to do your introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. I was finishing the conference today. So Lisa here. I am based in France, originally from Taiwan, and happy to talk about regulation. We work on 2 European projects in grilled by European Commission a lot. So I'm happy to share some insights of especially the 2 acts coming to apply soon. Thank you for having me.
Hello, I'm Dr. E.C.E. Demulia. I am from Atlanta, Georgia. That's where I live. So I will share a bit of what is going on in the U.S. Non-regulatory market. I am originally from Nigeria in West Africa. Excited to be here.
Andrew Harrison. So I do agentic and GenAI governance at RBN Emerald. I wanted to start, we'll jump straight into things. I won't mention the birth date, but there is a birth date. No, there is. One round of applause. It's obviously birthday.
Thank you.
So I want to start first, Lisa. How do you keep up with the EU AI Act and all the changes and what that means at the moment, also for Confidence?
I think it's very, as I said, we have a 2 European project. I think it's very important to keep all the channel available because there's a lot of guidance document and opinion documents, and they are not necessarily like the release in the same places. And what we do keep it on track is that we work with the ethic advisor, that kind of scouting open information, participating also in all the forum, workspace, work group about this. I definitely wanted to share our experience that I think EU Acts, when it comes to the rule, is quite general. It's not very specific. It means there's room for interpretation, and we have a spectrum of more strict and more like tolerant, and it's always try to go to the more strict side because you never know who will be the one be the referee, who will be the one giving the comments. So for our case, to answer the question, we keep up this with the external effort, also internally we're selling all the documents from EU. And they have a lot of the work group updates and always giving more and more information. Not all the information are 100% aligned, but I definitely recommend is that checking those, and if you find one of the things that's aligned the most to what you're doing, quote the document in your documentation. Of course, there is ever an audit or any checking ongoing, you can say that I was referring to this work group's document, and that always help because it's help you to define the spectrum with the reference that from tolerant to strict one.
Thanks very much. And then on the other side of the pond, where at least at the federal level, they're a little bit more adverse to regulation. Dr. C, give your thoughts.
Yes, there's been a bit of a roller coaster in the US. I'll share a bit. October 2023, the administration at the time put together this framework for, safe and secure, trustworthy AI. I remember then we had all of the big companies and Microsoft and the rest coming together to sign like a voluntary commitment to safeguarding AI systems. And so that went on for about 2 years, and then January 2025, there was the new administration who sort of shifted away from that regulatory standpoint to a more innovative first global this is global dominance of AI, and so that's sort of where we are now. So shifted away from regulation to more deregulation and AI dominance. That was in January 2025. July 2025, there was the AI race, America's AI Action Plan that revoked that regional safety executive order in 2023. So that has now been repealed and been revoked. And just currently in December 2025, there's been a national AI policy task force. That task force is mandated to go into like the states and repeal and sort of report any agency who is trying to regulate. So that is where we are now. There's a couple of states' laws. So at the federal level, it's no regulation. But some states have enacted a couple of laws. So we have the Colorado AI Act that will be in effect June of 2026. We have the Texas AI Act, and then California, we have the Transparency AI Act. So states at the state level, there's some regulation, but this task force now from the federal government is saying go and sort of punish anyone who is trying to obey laws at the state level. So that's where we are.
And that certainly introduces some interesting challenges for organizations in the United States, or at least in the market there, who still want to build trustworthy AI, and yet at the federal level, it's the whole notion of AI race, just go. So now I want to jump into a little bit some actual examples and use cases and real life challenges and what we've been doing to share with the people who've attended. So first I wanted to look at, in terms of trustworthy AI, what the AI governance life cycle. And I'll turn to yourself on this one again, Dr. Z. Thoughts on the importance of it, maybe how it should be structured, in your experience, where it's gone well, where it maybe hasn't gone so well. It'd be great to share some of your experiences on it.
Sure. So even though in the US we do not have a national AI law like we have in Europe, there's still other laws around just humanity, discrimination, data privacy. For example, in California, we have the CCPA Act, especially in highly regulated industries. And finance, we have the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. So you can't, if you get credit that goes to to US citizens, there has to be some form of equality. You also have to communicate why a decision, a loan was rejected. So those are laws that already exist that in practice we are leveraging some of existing laws to help us support our governance approach. So some of the ways I'll speak about a financial service client that I recently worked with, and they wanted to move from like their SDLC, that's a standard just software development life cycle, into a more agentic life cycle. And the question was, what would governance look like in agentic? So what we did was obviously starting from the design phase, just from the use case, actually defining the use cases, create a risk assessment. Now, the risk assessment in this case is very unique because we had to include policies and laws unique to that financial industry. So the Fair Lending Act, the Equal Opportunity Act, those are things that we had to consider in while creating some kind of risk assessment, how the design fits. Then at the model level, we're also making sure there's no barriers, discrimination, taking care of all of those things at the model level. Then when we go into like testing, we had a lot of partners here. We do red teaming. So at the testing level, we're red teaming for bias, fairness factors, red teaming for safety, all of those components, prompt injections, and things like that. Then we move from the model level, we move to testing, and then at production, we also implement things like just post-production monitoring. The monitoring is key because the regulation is also requiring for auditability purposes, you need to at every point in time report decisions of the agent back to sort of the auditors. So we sort of build governance around existing strong regulations. I've tried to avoid some of the AI. And I think what I'm saying also in practice is that the highly regulated industries, like finance, healthcare, they do want to be responsible. Even though there's an opportunity to wiggle away because of the chaos between the federal government and the state, but the highly regulated want to be responsible, and they're working closely with people like us to help them achieve that.
Thank you very much. So, a quick question on that, with that one at least. I think a lot are still struggling with agentic in terms of, do you just file it to the human? Do they need their kind of own ID? And I think also to the extent, you mentioned tracing them and what they did, still trying to figure out, what exactly do we need to record? Is this like a software system? We need every single trace. Do we also need the chain of thought? Do you have a chain of thought on that? I guess would that use case or others should be involved?
Yeah, so I treat agents like human, and at least in America, we're being tracked on your computer. You log in from the time you log in to the time you log out. So if humans can be tracked, what software you use at what point in time, I think agents will be tracked the same way. So we do recommend a practice to put traces of every single API call, every tool call from an agent, every agent-to-agent interaction should be logged. Now, what to do with those traces is different for different organizations, but at the basic level, track everything, trace everything. We've seen, for example, clients who would say, okay, we want to be able to determine what does that human in the loop rates look like. So how many times does an agentic action fail or is confused and has to call a human? The reason they're tracking that is because you want to be able to understand just sort of that trust. To what extent can they trust the agent? So for that organization, trust is a big factor, but the only way we can the only way we can define the trust factor or the trust score is by tracing sort of that every action. That's why the one that calculated.
Yeah, so I would like to share continue to what you say. So we've been working with a major banking company in Europe, and they want to have this internal threat detection. I want to give you an example how does the UX really play in real life. Because when it comes to monitoring green work or education environments, it's really considered have a tendency go to high risk. Either you are in limited risk or high risk. So when it comes to this, there's a lot of evaluation one need to consider. It's kind of like a lot of justification document there that as similar to EC mentioned. We need to really document, okay, what is the objective? Why are we doing? So the full cycle, a bit like when you're making CE marking, all the document, you need to write down all the log, and then you monitor, have a people in the loop just to know, okay, every action. So the banking company wanted to detect this internal threats of could be intentionally down or due to the burnout, due to the stress, and then trying to do that. And this is a topic, for example, that this earlier, Andrew and I were in the same talk, was about the stepstone. When it comes to work environment, when it comes to education, extra attention must be paid because this is considered high risk area. And in addition to that, what EC mentioned, the infrastructure, I think we also need to pay attention that since we're in the chatbot summit, many chatbot has been built not just to interact internally or just agent to run internally, is to do the external part, which means the existing rule about privacy law, like the TCPA, CIPA, GDPR, still apply. And this is actually right now triggering many fines happening in US and Europe. For example, in the past, you have a call center to make a call to your clients. Your call center have asking certain actions. Your call center human agent is able to keep the boundary. But when now using Gen AI, Gen AI tend to help, tend to say things, tend to do whatever they can to help human, and that usually cross the boundary. I give you an example. In US, there's a case is a company wanted to call their clients to remind them to do their blood test. And that's a simple robot call. That's just a reminder. But when some clients division wanted to do, okay, I got a call, maybe I just ask some question about my diet, about my medication. AI should not answer any question, but AI does. And that is triggering this multi-million lawsuits ongoing. And this is the one thing that in addition to the governance, which is very crucial for inside the company, how we use the agent, what is also important is that, okay, what does the agent, when it comes out to outside the company as interface with the clients, what kind of boundary and what kind of tasks we're setting? Another example, which is very common, is that there's something called do not call this in Europe as well as in US. In Europe, each country have different names. I think in Spain it's called Robinson this, there's all of this. What happened right now, being observed in the industry is that people are live for this, meaning that they notice you have a AI or post AI. They wanted to, you call them, they tell you, say, don't call me again. And they go on the website, try to prompt you to call them again, then they record it, and they will be able to report you and get an incentive. And this is a real problem because imagine you are trying to use robot call, 2,000 calls a day. If that ever happened, each call in US is $1,500. In Europe, it's 6,000 euro. So this is the thing, I think, when it comes to really deploying not just voice AI, also in the chatbot, whenever it comes to a part that you wanted to increase the customer user experience, there's a risk you need to consider is that, am I compliant with the current law because these laws are actually not new, right? They've been existing before AI, and it applies on AI too. So this is things I think when we talk about this session, whether it is hosting, this easy talking, we are talking really about corporate level as well as when it comes to the customer service and interaction outside the corporate.
Thank you. That's an interesting example. I remember, what was it, in the early days of Gen AI, I think it was on Spotify, that someone was using AI to create songs and then having bots to kind of listen to them all and making quite a bit of money. So people are quite ingenious. And I think the PII point is also very relevant. We internally also had to push back one of our launches because we realized during testing that it accepts information it should, or it can ask information it shouldn't, and that's past the normal PII screening in a conversational flow. So you essentially have to have PII screening all the time, which adds to the cost of the tokens being used all the time. And so I think it makes a question of, sometimes in certain flows when humans with their judgment should still be there. And I just wanted to swing back onto one point you made, Leticia. In the US, pervasive monitoring of employee behavior and everything is much more common. In Europe, not. So do you think, and also yourself, Dr. Lisa, that that's going to make it, easier or faster for safe, trustworthy adoption of agentic? They're putting aside the EUA Act, but just quicker adoption of agentic in markets where pervasive kind of human monitoring has already been more common, because then it's a simple switchover. Whereas in Europe, then we need to learn how this should be when we can pervasively or should pervasively monitor agents.
Yeah, I think in some quarters, obviously there's that desire to dominate the AI space. So not with agentic, the US is just rushing, like you need to be the leaders in agentic deployment, innovation, and build out and roll out. And there's this parallel conversation to say, okay, if we can monitor it, just monitoring the activity, then that's enough. That's enough. Like 2 weeks ago, there was also this thing in the news. If you notice, the Pentagon asked OpenAI to share all of the data. Asked Anthropic to share all of the data. So all of our interactions with Anthropic should be shared with Pentagon. And Anthropic said, no, we can't share that. And within a couple of minutes, OpenAI went and got that contract from the government. And their understanding is that we just monitor it. We're just monitoring what users are doing. We're not sharing any PII data. So I think that there's somehow a confidence level around just they're monitoring us anyway, so they can monitor our interactions with agents, which shouldn't be, I think, in my opinion. I think there's some comfort there around that.
So I would like to add some point here, because actually there's a corporate software already grow. I think maybe some of your company already have is, for example, the first entry card is they will filtering the spam mail, and the second they will probably filtering like what kind of mail they would. You probably will get the mail say this comes from external mailbox, etc. And the banking company I mentioned is that yes, they actually use this kind of monitoring. They monitor when do they send the mail and what is the attachment and who do they send to. And these are actually used in Europe, and they do, for example, they mentioned that they got sued by their work union in Germany. But in short is that I think at the moment the constraint in the UAX is that when it comes to this kind of monitoring system, they cannot do the semantic analysis yet, unless you have make a EU Act of a high risk justification. So that means at the moment, if any enterprise wanted to monitor the content what is inside. Doing NLP or using LLM to do any semantic analysis is restricted, but in general about the activity log has been approved, and I believe in a highly regulated industry like finance, it has been used. So again, when it comes to AI using it, there's definitely a concern, right? Like it will use large language model to analyze the log. How do we know the hallucination comes? So I believe that it will be quite challenging when somebody wants to apply such things in a work environment. The justification dossier will be very extensive to complete.
If I can also just add, so the American companies also have European customers, and because of that, they have to consider the EUR Act, and we're seeing that with a lot of our clients who are intentionally building the EUR Act as the standard, so that they can also sort of cater to those markets. So even though it doesn't matter in America, they cannot exclude the European customers. So
Very much. You'll notice that one of our speakers was not here today, which gives us a little bit more time. So I wanted to ask already after what we've discussed, and we wanted to make it a little bit more interactive. Did anyone from the audience have a question they wanted to ask, and we'll see discuss stuff? So I should have told you this at the start.
I wanted to ask why we either derive data based on user prompts.
Sorry, I didn't get it. It was out here.
Well, it's not right. So you wanted to derive data based on user prompts.
So can we monitor?
Derive data based on user prompts. So not direct prompts, but derive data around.
Yeah, I think we can get it from. So we have the Stepstone talk like previously. I have the discussion. I think what they did is like they do the CV analysis, and again, I mentioned to him is that the wording. You can imagine people in the elder generation, younger generation, the word you use to describe things could be different. And that wording could be considered providing like some hints regarding this. So my comments would be that if you have such things, exactly like the question you have, it's good to have a layer of tricking that is unified to everybody, that is able to, for example, somebody use a prompt, maybe the prompt has some like a slang or something could tell what was the person's identity, or background, the group, etc. So if you wanted to analyzing, I think it's good you have a filter first that tell me what is this about. Objectively, really just the goal oriented. No preference, no information. As long as there's nothing can really trace back to the group, and then there is no risk about any possible discrimination or biased evolution. What do you think?
yeah, I think it's a tricky one because people also, to get the best out of LLMs, you need to personalize a little bit. So you see what I mean? So that's the challenge. So there has to be that sweet spot between personalizing to get for performance and then also regulating and not personalizing. I think that's where it's a tough question, but finding that sweet spot, I feel like it's gonna be different for different industries, different sectors. And something that the risk guy said yesterday was the risk tolerance for the organization. That would really determine where to move that lever in such decisions. I've worked with a utility company who, when I was creating their risk assessment, said fairness was not something they were interested in at all. And I built this whole scoring logic around accountability to fairness, safety, security, like the main blocks, and decided to take it out. And I mean, as a consultant, you sort of do what the client wants because so that you get paid. But I was interested to understand what sort of that thought process was. So I met with this team who shared, their risk register. I mean, some things I cannot say, but from their risk register, their risk loads, and how they arrive at sort of that tolerance level. So it's different, but yeah.
So just follow up at the
Yeah.
it's same fault combined. So what we found, our employees use assisted data, but they can provide personal information. Now we would like to remove that information and analyze the context as general. Yeah, but this is. But if we do that, we are stretching the line towards moving into personal fault. So you are subject to roles allow analyzing back through machine learning. Here's some data as well, but signing a big context.
Well, if the personal information is not anonymized, right, has been extracted from the prompt, does it still belong to them? You see what I mean? So
I don't know. I think in this question, what is essential you can do is that, because I understand your goal is to know what kind of intention or how do they use, right? That kind of like ROI, you want to know how do they use it. I think what is important is like what I mentioned. You definitely need to, first step is to remove this PII information. And I think once it's removed, it becomes anonymized. And once it's anonymized, you'll be able to treat it, which means GDPR-wise that if any of your employee requests to withdraw, then you still allow them to do, but you allow the process anonymize or pseudo-anonymize. I think once you remove all these relevant things, I think the easiest probably would be having the most robust if you have a transformer-based task classifier to remove it. Or you can do is use several layers of the reasoning model of a large language model to remove them. Yeah, and all your information then will be unable to trace back to your original employee. So then you will be able to analyze it. But again, you should have all these steps documented, and like DC mentioned, you should have a risk assessment. As long as you're able to justify why are you doing this. For example, you wanted to, you see the AI tool is helping. You wanted to know whether it's really working. So this is a necessary step, right? So this is justified. What is the precaution you do? What is the risk? And once you're able to have this document down, I think you are okay to go. Just remember this, that if they decided to withdraw from the pool of analysis, you still need to give them this choice.
So, summarize then. So to summarize then, so if we have empty matching into precipitation, they bring out the personal information, and then analyze the critical context. Is this happening without storage explanation on the derived data? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think actually you can have a data retention in this space, but justify it. For example, you can say, I need to justify it for 3 months or 30 days or even 6 months because I have an audit within different team. You have a project management team, you have an HR team, and each team would be that you need to justify it. But you cannot say something really outrageous. For example, you cannot say, I want to keep it for 10 years, etc. So as long as you're able to justify, I think in the GDPR, you are able to decide the retention period on that.
The idea is copy as well.
Have the microphone back at some point. Always just freestyle questions. We do have more content, but let's do some more questions. Yeah.
Yeah, just an observation along with the question, because I'm the researcher, so, and you were mentioning before that once the data is anonymized and if the user requests this data, they should be given the data. I don't think this can happen because the data, once it's anonymized, you cannot trace it back. So it should be by default, it's anonymized, therefore it needs to be declared clearly that there's no way to actually give back the data when it's anonymized. Or, I mean, could you explain this?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This is a good question, but in GDPR, everybody has a right to destroy any type of data, even it's anonymized. So I think the easiest way is you can tokenize the name. So for example, I give you an example, three of us, right? And we will change the name, swap in the ID. So instead of Lisa, EC, and Andrew, it will become completely different, maybe 8001, 8002, 8003. The thing is, no matter how you process data, GDPR guarantee the user who have the data, who had ownership of data, which is employee in this case, always have the right to do it. But I think in a way that in your term for this gentleman, you could mention that since you will fully anonymize and you have no intention to have any way to trace back, so you don't want to give them this IP, right, like the 801, 802, then you need to say that in certain way that since the data entering the pool, I have no way to trace back, then I have a really limited way to really remove it. I think there's a balance need to get is that for sure the GDPR gives them the rights. But if you really, really fully remove after a certain period of time, there's no way for you to do that. You should have a mitigation. You can say that because I'm fully anonymized. So today you withdraw or you don't withdraw, there's nothing I can do because I completely cut the connection of that. I think as long as the justification is provided or certain, for example, after 30 days or after how many days you cannot remove it because I'm going to cut all the connection, then you can do it. But it's a great question because I fully agree. Because I think the precondition, once the precondition is given, you can do the fully anonymous, but the precondition must be defined, yes.
Because if you start tokenizing, then you give less assurance that it's actually anonymized. So I think that it's better to give full assurance that it's anonymized rather than keep the data in a way if it is actually, protected in her way.
I think in a way it's in the consent form, right? Imagine you browse the internet, right? You browse a website and you probably have like let's say, imagine you browse it and a couple years later you wish to withdraw. That is something can be challenging for them. So I think in the terms of the agreement where you sign a consent, you can mention that, okay, I'm going to fully anonymize. I'm not able, I have certain limitation. If I can do it, I do it. If I cannot do it, I will do what kind of mitigation to do that. Yeah.
So almost like a cookie announcements, but adjusted to the workplace thing that, only analytic cookies or all cookies or small rejectors, and like if the cookie announcement when you're starting working for someone.
Okay, I'll go it back. We have a little bit more content. We don't want to run too far over. But I will just add one thing to that. So when you are doing anonymization, but now using kind of LLMs that can quite impact its performance. So I recommend looking into kind of contextual anonymization. So it's just not just anonymizing it, but keeping context so it can the model can still perform well on that data. I know in the Netherlands they trained GPT NL, and they did a lot of contextual anonymization as well. Our panelist that is missing was meant to talk a little bit about the trade-off and tensions with innovation and compliance, but instead you get me. So, yeah. I'm just checking time. 7
minutes.
And then it's the hard.
That's it.
Oh, we are way over
On
time.
top, I know.
Okay. We might need to cut down to 1 or 2 recommendations. Yeah. Okay, I'll do the short version. So I think most organizations now, they started with one GPI model, right? And they've been through and this is probably for me one of the biggest, trade-off innovation versus compliance. Do we just give a GPI model to everyone? We train them a little bit and we just let them use it. And we hope they don't do IRS stuff in there. We hope they don't do prohibited stuff in there, right? And I think most organizations' training maturity is kind of more to kind of awareness training and then adoption training, and you'll have tool-specific gating to get access to that GPI tool, and they'll have terms and conditions that they're meant to sign and adhere to, but then they have free access to it, right? And you'll put some guardrails on their internal use, but someone's throwing two CVs in there and saying which one should I choose. You can't really control for that, right? And this has been a constant challenge for organizations, right? So we're part of the Responsible AI Roundtable in the Netherlands, which is a lot of Dutch corporates, originally out of some of the AI Pact signees. And this has been a perennial question. And as a large, highly regulated industry, we were one of the strictest originally in terms of, we said, it's only for ad hoc usage. As soon as you do it twice a day, or two different people are doing the same thing, that needs to be a use case. You need to go through the full use case process. This needs to be kind of a version, a API call for the specific version of that model 5.1, for example. Because otherwise, and we still had it, and the new version of GPT comes out, Microsoft overnight updates it, and then everyone in your organization is now on a new version of that model for stuff they maybe made kind of procedural a little bit. But we were the strictest in that, and then everyone else that we were talking to, the large forwards, were like, no, we allow them, we do all the training I mentioned, and then we just we monitor it, and then we intervene if things are happening, right? So then it's kind of getting a bit more sophisticated and aware with kind of your prompt monitoring what people are doing, and kind of intervening and having 3 strike rules, and you're off the system for a week or a month or different things like that, right? And then how long have I got? 4. Okay. I had one more, but I don't think it's as interesting as hearing some wrap-up points. So we were originally going to have 3 each of attention points, next steps you should take, or a kind of a future idea, and maybe squish that into 1 or 2 things. And so I want to start first with yourself, Dr. Lisa. What are your kind of takeaways, call to actions, or feature ideas for the audience?
I think the every AI Act is something we need to pay attention because we're doing AI. But I think there's one takeaway I want to say is that remember why are we using AI, and the role we are using AI, that goal we should pay attention. For example, like the call center one I mentioned, customer service one. I think this being oftenly omitted is that yes, you can use the voice AI. Yes, you can use chatbot to save a lot of money. You can do that to facilitate a lot of work, much better user experience. But you need to know that by the time you are deciding to use that, there's a law that already exists in decades, and that applies to your way. And because you're using AI, for example, like in the US, the FCC, of course, forbid outbound call for using AI, etc. So there's attention that we need to pay, not just AI, like AI Act related, but the thing is, what are you using AI to replace? And those rules currently, like valid, will apply to you. And that's the one takeaway I want you to give to the audience.
So I'll say 2 things. On a personal level, use placeholders as much as possible. So when I'm interacting with Claude or ChatGPT, I never use myself. I just put my name in there. I just use X is one to do this. Why would you say use placeholders if you're worried about just your personal information? Then on an enterprise side, like catalog everything. I would say if you cannot inventory it, you cannot govern it. So the minute an employee creates a GPT or creates an agent to do any work, catalog it, have an inventory, of everything. And I think that's the first quality of governance. Thank you.
I think if we have time, I'll add one as well. It's what I like to call, well, let me give context first. AI is permeating through the organizations, right? It's not slowing down, it's growing. It's going to be in every single software tool the organizations are using. There's also questions about whether organizations going to start vibe coding a lot more of their software than themselves. You see, even coming back this year, I had a nice on holiday, but coming back at the start of this year, I see the maturity of people in the GPI systems. They now have, multi-hundred word, multi-page prompts, and they use AI to help write the prompts, and then they kind of run a conversation. They've essentially user-developed, AI end applications, right? So it's going everywhere. How, as compliance, regulation professionals, do you keep up with that? You can't scale yourself. So this is where AI for AI governance comes in, right? And this is also where you can, make governance an accelerator and think of it more as a kind of a product base. Like, can you use AI to automatically extract from the code and all the documentation, a kind of screening and assessment of that use case that then the local team then reviews, that you as a governance professional can also review, or also help use AI to do some triaging for yourself, and specifically with agentic when we're looking at more kind of real-time controls, ongoing monitoring as well. You can't scale yourselves. You're going to have to probably have kind of compliance agents or frameworks, or I think Gartner's calling them guardian angels. And so I think the compliance and governance profession itself there's a technical role for it, and there's this AI for AI governance is going to be critical.
Thank you very much. Did we enjoy it? I think it was very informative, and as a parent, I could not have all of my insurance in adult by now, but I just could not help what you talked about, just getting kids involved in how they're like peer-to-peer learning. I think that's why they're noticing, like, do not put your names, and it's just something that as parents could just, as someone mentioned the stats, like 70% of young people in the UK are per kid class are using AI already. So it's not too early to talk about those things. And perhaps there's pressure to, whether it's workplace organizations or states or that organizations comes from the bottom, that, hey, we are not okay with those things, we want this change. So sometimes the changes are not happening from the top to the bottom, but from the bottom to the top. The fact there's a big pressure, then perhaps that's the way to make change. Thank you all very much for listening, paying attention. Can we get one special applause for our rep maker? Thank you.